Stand still for a moment. Right now, you are standing on the thinnest, coldest, most fragile part of an object almost entirely made of fire. Beneath your feet, there are 6,371 kilometers of rock, and metal, and pressure, and heat, going straight down to a place no light has ever touched. We are going to travel all of it, kilometer by kilometer, down to the very center of the world. And the deeper we go, the stranger, hotter, and more impossible it becomes, until we reach a place where iron is solid at the temperature of the surface of the sun, and where, for reasons no one fully understands, the heart of our planet recently stopped turning. But to understand where we are going, you have to understand how little of it we have ever actually seen. Because here is the first uncomfortable truth. No human being has ever been to the mantle. Not close. Not even 1% of the way. Everything we know about the inside of this planet, we learned without ever going there. We read it in earthquakes, in echoes, in the way the ground rings like a bell when it is struck. Every large earthquake sends a pulse of energy completely through the body of the planet. It comes out the other side changed, bent, delayed, some of it missing entirely. By collecting those pulses from thousands of earthquakes on instruments all over the world, we can build something extraordinary, a kind of medical scan of the entire planet. A CT scan of the Earth. For 100 years, we have been building a picture of the inside of the world the way a bat sees a cave. Not with light. With sound. But a few people were never satisfied with echoes. They wanted to touch it. In 1970, in the frozen far north of Russia, a team of Soviet engineers decided to do something no one had ever tried. They were going to drill a hole straight down, as deep as machinery could possibly reach, and touch the mantle with their own instruments. They gave themselves a target. They would drill 15 kilometers into the crust. They drilled for almost 20 years. And at just over 12 kilometers, something happened down in that hole that made them stop for good. We will get back to that hole. To what they found in it, and why they sealed it shut. That is the first thing I want you to hold in the back of your mind as we descend. Here is the second. Right now, invisible, stretched across the entire sky above your head, there is a shield. It deflects a storm of radiation from the sun that would otherwise strip away the air you are breathing and boil the oceans into space. That shield is not made in the sky. It is generated almost 3,000 kilometers below your feet by an ocean of liquid metal the size of Mars, moving in the dark. We are going to reach that machine. We are going to stand beside the thing that keeps you alive. And the third thing. In the year 2023, scientists studying the very center of the Earth announced that the solid heart of our planet had done something that should be impossible. It had stopped. And it may now be turning backwards. We will get there too. But it is a long way down. So let's begin. 0 kilometers. The surface. Take one last look at the light. Because from here on, every step is downward, and the light does not follow us for long. The first thing we pass through is the world you already know. Soil. Roots. Groundwater. The thin living skin of the planet, rarely more than a few meters deep. Below that, the rock begins. And with the rock comes the first rule of the deep earth, a rule that never stops for the rest of the journey. For every kilometer you descend, it gets hotter. About 25 degrees Celsius hotter every single kilometer. It doesn't sound like much. But do the math, and the deep earth stops being a place you could ever walk into. 10 kilometers down, before you have gone anywhere at all by the scale of this journey, the rock around you is already hotter than boiling water. 30 kilometers down, it glows. Come with me to the deepest place a human being has ever physically stood. It is a gold mine in South Africa called Mponing. To reach the bottom, miners ride an elevator for over an hour, dropping through the dark toward a rock face for kilometers beneath the surface. Down there, the rock itself is hot enough to cook a human being. The natural temperature of the stone is around 60 degrees Celsius. Without gigantic machines pumping cooled air and slurried ice down the shafts, no one could survive at the bottom for more than a few minutes. The mine has to make its own weather just to keep the workers alive. And the rock does not want them there. At that depth, the pressure of the mountain above can make the stone explode inward without warning, a phenomenon the miners call a rock burst, where the walls of the tunnel detonate like a bomb. And here is the part that should stop you. For kilometers is the absolute deepest a human has ever descended into the Earth's own body. We have gone 4 kilometers out of 6,371. We have not even scratched it. We are still standing on the skin. That's the honest comparison for the crust you live on. If the Earth were shrunk to the size of an apple, the entire crust, every mountain, every ocean floor, every mine, every deepest hole we have ever dug, would be thinner than the apple's skin. Everything human beings have ever built, every city, every war, every life that has ever been lived, has happened on that skin. But before we leave it, I have to show you something living down here that almost no one knows about. Because kilometers beneath the surface, sealed inside solid rock, in total darkness, with no oxygen and no sunlight, there is life. Microscopic organisms living in the pores and cracks of the deep crust, feeding not on light, but on the raw energy of the rock and the chemistry of the water squeezed through it. Some of them may divide only once every few thousand years. Some have been sealed in the same drop of water since before the first fish crawled onto land. Scientists now estimate that the total mass of this hidden underground life, this deep biosphere, may rival all the life on the surface of the planet combined. There is a whole living world beneath the world, and we walked on top of it for our entire history without knowing it was there. And this, the deep, hidden biosphere, brings us right back to that Russian hole. The Kola super deep borehole. The closest we have ever physically come to leaving the skin. The hole is barely wider than a dinner plate, but it goes down 12,262 meters. And as the drill went deeper, the rock started behaving in ways the engineers did not expect. They had assumed the deep crust would be dry, dense, and predictable. It was none of those things. At depths where every model said the rock should be bone dry, they found water, free-flowing water, squeezed out of the crystals in the rock itself by unimaginable pressure, in a place it should not exist. And deeper still, around 6 kilometers down, they pulled up something that made the geologists go quiet. Microscopic fossils. The remains of tiny living organisms, 24 different species of ancient plankton, sealed inside the rock 2 billion years ago. Life, entombed in stone, from a time when Earth was less than half its current age. Preserved perfectly, kilometers beneath a frozen wasteland where nothing lives on the surface today. But the real reason they stopped was heat. The engineers had planned for the temperature at the bottom to be around 100 degrees Celsius. Instead, at 12 kilometers, they hit 180. And at that temperature, under that pressure, the rock stopped behaving like solid stone. It started to flow. The rock at the bottom of the hole had become plastic, soft, moving, closing the drill hole back up as fast as they could bore it. The Earth was, quite literally, healing the wound. Every meter deeper became a fight against a planet that would not stay drilled. And eventually, they gave up. They sealed the hole and walked away. That was the best we could do. 12 kilometers. 0.2% of the way to the center. And the planet still won. But there was another idea. If the continents were too thick to drill through, why not go where the crust is thinnest? Because the crust is not the same everywhere. Under the continents it is thick, 35 kilometers or more. But under the oceans, the crust is thin. In places, barely 5 kilometers of rock separates the deep sea floor from the mantle. So in the 1960s, American scientists launched a wild plan called Project Mohole to drill from a ship down through kilometers of ocean water and then straight through the thin sea floor to become the first humans to pull up a piece of the mantle. They actually started. From a floating platform in the deep Pacific, they drilled into the ocean crust for the first time in history. And then the money ran out, and the project was cancelled. Since then, ship after ship has tried, including a giant Japanese drilling vessel built specifically to punch all the way through to the mantle. And every single one has failed. To this day, more than 60 years later, no one has ever drilled through the crust into the mantle. Not once. The most explored planet we know of, and we have never touched the layer that makes up most of it. But there is one more way humans have brushed against the deep heat, and it happened entirely by accident. In 2009, a drilling team in Iceland was boring a well to tap geothermal steam, aiming for hot rock a couple of kilometers down. Instead, at just over 2 kilometers, their drill punched into something no one expected this close to the surface. Magma. Living, molten rock, welling up into the borehole from a hidden chamber. They had drilled into the raw interior of the planet at a depth a car could cover in minutes. The heat was so extreme, over 900 degrees Celsius, that the well became one of the most powerful geothermal sources ever recorded, superheated steam screaming up the pipe with enough energy to light a town. It was a reminder that the fire is closer than we like to believe. In most places, the molten world is kilometers beyond our reach. But in others, over a rising plume, above a shallow magma chamber, the distance between our fragile surface and the furnace below is not thousands of kilometers. It is a bad afternoon with a drill. So from here, we can no longer send a drill at all. From this point down, everything is echoes. And the echoes are richer than you might think. When a truly great earthquake strikes, it does not just send waves shooting through the planet and out the other side. It makes the entire Earth ring like a struck bell. The whole planet vibrates, expanding and contracting by tiny amounts, humming with deep tones far too low for any human ear to hear. After the largest earthquake ever recorded, the magnitude 9.5 that struck Chile in 1960, the Earth rang for weeks. Seismometers all over the world picked up the planet still quietly humming, days after the ground had gone still. And here is the extraordinary part. The exact pitch of those tones depends on what the inside of the Earth is made of, how dense the core is, how large, how deep the boundaries lie. So by listening to the notes the planet plays after a great quake, scientists can literally weigh the core and measure the layers without ever touching them. We do not just see the inside of the Earth in the echoes. We hear it sing. And at around 35 kilometers, under the continents, we cross an invisible line that took a century to understand. In 1909, a Croatian scientist named Andrija Mohorovičić was studying the records of an earthquake when he noticed something odd. The seismic waves seemed to speed up suddenly at a certain depth, as if they had crossed from one material into a completely different, denser one. He had discovered a hard boundary deep underground, where the crust ends and something else begins. We still call it the Moho, in his honor. And crossing it means we are finally leaving the crust behind. Let's pause here, at the very edge of the crust, and be honest about what this journey would actually do to you. Because we have been descending as if you could simply walk down, and you could not. Nothing living can go where we are going next. The heat alone would have killed you kilometers ago. Long before the mantle, the rock is hot enough to cook flesh, then to melt lead, then to glow. But it is the pressure that is the real monster. Every kilometer of rock above you presses down harder. By the base of the crust, the force is already thousands of times what you feel at the surface, enough to crush a submarine like an empty can, enough to squeeze water straight out of solid stone. Go deeper, into the mantle, and no material a human could ever build would hold its shape. You would not be crushed slowly. At these pressures and temperatures, the very idea of a body, of anything with a surface and a boundary, simply stops making sense. This is why we have never been here, and never will. From this line down, we travel only as ghosts, sending our imagination ahead, and reading back whatever the echoes return. Below the moho, we enter the largest single layer of the planet. It makes up 84% of the Earth's entire volume. It is almost 3,000 kilometers thick. And almost nobody could describe it correctly if you asked them. This is the mantle. And the first thing everyone gets wrong about it is this. It is not a sea of lava. It is not liquid. The mantle is solid rock. You could stand on it if it weren't thousands of degrees. But over thousands and millions of years, this solid rock flows, slowly, like a glacier of stone, or like extremely thick honey. Whole continents ride on top of this flow. The ground under your feet is moving right now, carried on currents of solid rock, at about the speed your fingernails grow. Every mountain range, every earthquake, every volcano, every ocean that has ever opened or closed, all of it is the surface expression of this slow, relentless churning far below. When a volcano erupts, you are not seeing the mantle itself. You are seeing a tiny fingertip of it, rock that melted only because it rose fast enough for the pressure to drop away. The magma in a volcano is the mantle whispering to the surface. But some volcanoes are not fed from just below. Some are fed from almost the very bottom of the mantle. Beneath Hawaii, and beneath Yellowstone, there are columns of hotter rock rising from deep in the mantle, some of them, we think, all the way from the boundary with the core, nearly 3,000 kilometers down. These are mantle plumes, like slow-motion fountains of solid rock, punching up through the planet over tens of millions of years. The chain of Hawaiian islands is the track of one of these plumes, each island burned into existence as the crust drifted slowly over a fixed jet of rising heat, deep below. You are looking at the surface signature of a fountain that reaches almost to the core. Down we go, deeper into the mantle. And now the pressure begins to do genuinely bizarre things to matter itself. Because as we descend, the atoms in the rock get squeezed closer and closer together. And at certain depths, the rock doesn't just get denser, it suddenly rearranges its own crystal structure, collapsing into a tighter, more compact form. At 410 kilometers, the mineral olivine, the most common material in the upper mantle, abruptly folds into a denser crystal. And here is a fact almost no one knows. Trapped inside those transformed crystals, hundreds of kilometers down, there is water. Not oceans, not lakes, water bound into the very structure of the rock. And there is so much of it, spread through this hidden layer, that some scientists estimate it could hold as much water as all the surface oceans combined. Maybe several times more. There is a hidden ocean inside the Earth. Not a cavern of water, a whole ocean's worth of it, woven into solid rock 400 kilometers beneath the sea floor. We only confirmed it a few years ago, from a single, strange diamond. That diamond is worth pausing on. Because diamonds are our only true messengers from the deep mantle. They form hundreds of kilometers down, and occasionally get blasted to the surface fast enough to survive the journey. Inside some of them are tiny flaws, microscopic pockets of the deep mantle, sealed in the hardest natural material on Earth. When a scientist cuts one open, they are opening a time capsule from 400 kilometers down. One of those flaws, one tiny trapped crystal, in one diamond, coughed up by a volcano, is how we found the hidden ocean inside the Earth. And in 2021, inside another diamond, scientists found something even stranger, a speck of a mineral that can only form far down in the lower mantle, hundreds of kilometers deep. a mineral no human had ever laid eyes on, because it cannot survive at the surface. The moment its diamond prison is opened, it begins to fall apart. We had been handed a single grain of the deep interior, delivered upward inside the only container on Earth strong enough to bring it home intact. And every part of this mantle is slowly circulating. A single blob of rock, riding these currents from the top of the mantle down toward the core and back up again, takes something like 100 to 200 million years to complete a single lap. The ground beneath you sits on a conveyor belt so unimaginably slow that in the time it takes to make one full loop, whole species rise and go extinct, and entire oceans open and close on the surface above. At 660 kilometers, we cross another great boundary, the line between the upper mantle and the lower mantle. And this is one of the most congested, violent places in the entire planet. Because this is where the graveyards of old ocean floors pile up. When tectonic plates dive back into the Earth, the cold slabs of ancient sea floor sink downward, and many of them get stuck right here, jammed against this boundary like ships run aground. There is another clue here, too. Almost every earthquake on Earth happens in the top few dozen kilometers of the crust. But a rare few happen far deeper, and the very deepest ever recorded occur right around this line, and then stop. Below about 700 kilometers, deep earthquakes simply vanish. We are still arguing about exactly why. The deep Earth keeps its reasons to itself. There are entire fossil oceans down here, the floors of seas that closed 100 million years ago, folded and crushed and sinking. Some eventually break through and continue down. All the way down. To the very bottom of the mantle. To a boundary so strange we are only beginning to understand it. 2,900 kilometers beneath your feet, we reach the bottom of the mantle, and one of the greatest mysteries in the Earth. Because sitting on top of the core, right here, are two continent-sized blobs. Two enormous structures, each larger than a continent, thousands of kilometers across, made of some material that is denser and different from everything around them. One sits under Africa. One sits under the Pacific. And we genuinely do not know what they are. Some scientists think they are graveyards of ancient sunken sea floor, piled up over billions of years. Others think they are something far older, leftover fragments of a Mars-sized planet that slammed into the early Earth and blasted out the moon, its shattered remains sinking to the bottom and never mixing back in. Pieces of a lost world, buried at the base of ours. And right at the very bottom, in a thin layer just above the core, there are puddles. Zones where the rock is so hot it has partly melted, pockets of near-liquid rock, pooled on the surface of the core like water on a hot road. This is the deepest, hottest floor of the solid Earth. And we are about to step off it entirely. Because below 2,900 kilometers, the solid planet gives way to a sea. An ocean of molten metal, mostly liquid iron, wrapped around the very heart of the world. This is the outer core. And before we go in, let me tell you how we know it is liquid, because we found out in one of the most elegant ways in all of science, and it involves a shadow. When an earthquake shakes the planet, it sends out two kinds of waves. One kind can travel through anything, solid or liquid. The other kind, a shearing, sideways wave, can only travel through solids. It dies instantly in liquid. And when scientists mapped where each kind of wave arrived after a big earthquake, they found something stunning. On the far side of the planet from any quake, there is a huge region, a shadow zone, where the shearing waves never arrive at all. They hit something in the middle of the Earth, and they die. The only explanation is a vast liquid barrier in the center of the planet, a core of molten metal that swallows those waves whole. We proved the Earth has a liquid heart by finding the shadow it casts in sound. We saw the core by seeing where the earthquakes could not reach. But this iron heart was not always here. When the Earth was young, a churning ball of rock and metal, still being hammered by impacts from space, the iron was not gathered at the center. It was scattered all through the planet, mixed evenly into the rock. But iron is heavy, and over millions of years, it began to sink. Droplet by droplet, the metal drained downward toward the middle of the world, and as it fell, it released so much gravitational heat that it may have melted the entire planet from the inside. Scientists call it the iron catastrophe, the moment the young Earth violently sorted itself into layers, the heavy metal plunging inward to build the core, the lighter rock floating up to form the mantle and the crust. Everything we live on is simply what was left floating on top after the iron sank. And the heat released in that ancient catastrophe is still down there. The core has been slowly cooling for 4.5 billion years, and it is still as hot as the surface of the sun. And it is here, in this dark ocean of liquid iron the size of Mars, that we finally reached the machine I promised you at the surface. The outer core is hotter than 4,000 degrees Celsius, and it is in constant, violent motion, currents of molten iron rising and falling and spiraling, twisted into vast columns by the spinning of the planet. And moving metal generates something. Electric currents. Magnetic fields. This churning ocean of iron is a natural dynamo, a self-sustaining electromagnetic engine, thousands of kilometers wide, that has been running for billions of years. This is it. This is the source of the shield. The magnetic field that surrounds the entire planet, that deflects the deadly solar wind, that lets compasses point north and lets life survive on the surface. All of it is generated here, by liquid metal moving in the dark, 3,000 kilometers beneath your feet. Every time you have seen the northern lights, you were watching this machine at work, the solar wind slamming into the field made by the core, glowing as it is turned aside. The aurora is the visible edge of a battle being fought by the metal heart of the planet, on your behalf, every second of your life. But the field is not steady. And this is where it gets frightening. The magnetic field made by the core is restless. It wanders. It weakens. And every few 100,000 years, it does something almost unbelievable. It flips. North becomes south. The entire magnetic field of the Earth reverses, collapses, and rebuilds itself pointing the other way. We know this because the record is written in stone, in the frozen magnetism of ancient lava, in stripes across the ocean floor, showing the field reversing again and again through deep time. The last full reversal was about 780,000 years ago. So what would happen if it flipped again? During a reversal, the field does not simply swing from one pole to the other. It weakens, and it splits. For centuries, the planet might have several weak north poles and south poles scattered across the sky at once. Compasses would wander uselessly. And it is not just compasses. Sea turtles, migrating birds, whales, even some bacteria navigate by sensing the Earth's magnetic field. During a reversal, the map they were born reading would dissolve. More radiation would reach the surface. Auroras, normally trapped near the poles, could shimmer over the equator. Our satellites and power grids, a civilization that never existed during the last flip, would be dangerously exposed. And here is the unsettling part. Right now, the field is weakening. There is a growing weak spot over the South Atlantic where the shield is already thinning enough to damage spacecraft passing over it. Some scientists wonder if we are in the early stages of another reversal, a process that would take thousands of years, and that no human civilization has ever witnessed. We do not fully know what it would mean for us. But we know the cause would be down here, in the restless churning of this iron sea. And to understand what is truly at stake, you only have to look at Mars. Mars is smaller than Earth, and it cooled faster. Billions of years ago, its core froze, the churning stopped, and its magnetic field died. And with the shield gone, the solar wind went to work, tearing away the Martian atmosphere, molecule by molecule, over hundreds of millions of years. The planet that may once have had rivers, lakes, maybe even shallow seas, became the frozen, airless, irradiated desert we see today. That is the difference a spinning metal core makes. Not comfort. Not convenience. Everything. The only reason Earth is a living world and Mars is a tomb may come down to this single fact: our iron heart is still turning, and theirs went still. One day, in the deep future, ours will cool and stop too. But not for billions of years. For now, the machine keeps running, and the sky stays. And there is one more secret hidden in this ocean of metal. The core is not just iron. Dissolved in it, dragged down when the young Earth first formed, is an unimaginable treasure of the heaviest elements: gold, platinum, and more. There is so much gold locked in the core that if you could somehow bring it all up and spread it out, it would cover the entire planet, land, and sea, in a layer half a meter deep. Nearly all the gold that human beings have ever fought and killed and died for, every ring, every coin, every bar in every vault, came from the tiny fraction delivered back to the surface later by meteorites and rising rock. The real treasure sank to the center at the beginning of time, and it is still down there, out of reach forever. And now we descend through the entire outer core, 2,000 kilometers of molten metal, toward the last and strangest place of all. The center of everything. Because at the heart of this liquid iron ocean, there is a solid. At 5,150 kilometers, the liquid iron gives way to a solid ball of iron and nickel, the inner core. A metal sphere about 70% the width of the moon, buried at the exact center of our world. And here is the fact that should not make sense. The inner core is the hottest place in the entire planet. It is around 5,400 degrees Celsius, almost exactly as hot as the surface of the Sun. So how, at the temperature of the Sun's surface, is it solid? Why isn't it molten like the ocean of iron surrounding it? The answer is pressure. The weight of the entire planet, 6,000 kilometers of rock and metal, presses down on this point with a force of 3.5 million atmospheres. At that pressure, iron cannot melt. The atoms are squeezed so tightly together that they lock into a solid crystal, even at the temperature of a star. The center of the Earth is a solid, blazing, crystalline ball of iron, frozen not by cold, but by sheer crushing weight. But how could anyone possibly know that, if no one can go there? The answer is one of the boldest tricks in all of science. In laboratories, physicists take a tiny fleck of iron and squeeze it between the polished tips of two diamonds, the only material hard enough to survive the force, then blast it with lasers. In that microscopic space, for a fraction of a second, they recreate the pressure and the temperature at the center of the Earth. They build a speck of the core, here on the surface, and watch how it behaves. Everything we believe about the heart of the planet has been tested inside a machine you could hold in your hand. And the inner core is growing. Every year, as the Earth very slowly cools, a little more of the liquid outer core freezes onto it, adding new crystals of iron. The heart of the planet is getting bigger, one crystal at a time, over billions of years. And in the swirling liquid just above the solid core, something almost poetic may be happening. As the iron slowly cools, tiny crystals form high in the outer core and begin to drift downward, a slow, endless snowfall of metal, sinking through an ocean of liquid iron to settle on the growing heart below. It snows, at the center of the Earth. Not water. Iron. And the solid heart it builds is surprisingly young. The inner core only began to freeze into existence somewhere between 1 and 1.5 billion years ago, which means the blazing metal ball at the center of the Earth is younger than life itself. Simple living things had already swarmed the oceans for billions of years before the planet ever grew a solid heart. That slow freezing releases energy, and that energy helps drive the churning of the outer core above it, which generates the magnetic field which shields the sky. It is all connected. The reason you are alive on the surface traces all the way down to iron slowly freezing at the center of the world. We know this solid core exists because of one remarkable person. In 1936, a Danish seismologist named Inga Learman was studying earthquake waves, and she noticed that certain waves were arriving in places they should have been impossible to reach. The only way to explain it was if there was a hard, solid object buried inside the liquid core, bouncing the waves in a way only a solid could. She had discovered the inner core of the Earth. She never saw it. No one ever has. She found a solid ball at the center of the planet by reading the echoes of distant earthquakes with a pencil and paper. And in the last few years, listening to those same echoes more carefully than ever before, scientists found something about this iron heart that genuinely stunned them. The inner core is not locked to the rest of the planet. It floats in the liquid metal around it, and it can spin at its own speed. For years, scientists believed it was turning slightly faster than the Earth itself, racing ahead, a fraction of a degree at a time. But in 2023, a study of decades of earthquake data revealed something else. The inner core appears to have slowed down, and around the year 2009, relative to the surface, it essentially stopped. And it may now be beginning to turn the other way. The center of the Earth may swing back and forth like an impossibly slow pendulum, changing direction over cycles lasting decades. Nobody predicted this. Nobody fully understands why. There is a metal ball the size of a small planet at the center of your world, and it changed direction within your lifetime, and we only found out by accident. And it goes deeper still. Because in the very center of the inner core, scientists now believe there is yet another layer, an innermost core, a distinct ball of iron about 600 kilometers across, where the crystals point in a different direction, as if it froze in a different era of Earth's history. A core, within a core, within a core. Each layer is a record of a different age of the planet, each one frozen at a different time, in a different way, holding a memory of what the Earth was doing billions of years ago. The center of the Earth is not just hot metal. It is an archive. Before we reach the exact center, let me leave you with the strangest thought experiment in all of physics. Imagine you could drill a tunnel straight through the Earth, from where you stand, through the mantle, through the molten core, and out the far side. And imagine you jumped in. Ignore the heat, ignore the pressure, just the physics. You would fall, faster and faster, pulled by the entire mass of the planet. By the time you reached the center, you would be moving at nearly 11 kilometers every second, faster than any bullet ever fired. And then you would shoot straight past the center and start slowing down, coasting all the way up to the surface on the other side of the world, arriving with exactly zero speed, just long enough to grab the edge, before falling back again. Back and forth, forever. And the total time for one complete fall, from one side of the Earth to the other? About 42 minutes. Shorter than an episode of television. That is how the physics of falling through an entire planet works. And now we arrive. The final kilometer. The exact center of the Earth. 6,371 kilometers straight down from where you were standing. The single point that everything on this planet is falling toward, right now, including you. And here, in the hottest, most crushed place on Earth, something beautiful and strange happens to gravity. Because here, at the exact center, the entire mass of the planet surrounds you equally, in every direction. The rock and metal above pulls up. The rock and metal below pulls down. Left, right, every direction, all pulling with equal force. And they cancel. At the very center of the Earth, gravity does not pull you down. It does not pull you anywhere. You would be perfectly, completely weightless. The most crushed point in the entire planet, 3.5 million atmospheres of pressure, the temperature of the surface of the sun, and if you could somehow be there, you would simply float. held in place by the pull of the entire world, in perfect balance, in absolute darkness. Think about how strange this place is. It is the exact middle of everything you have ever known. Every ocean, every mountain, every person who has ever lived, is somewhere above you now, in every direction at once. There is no down here, because every direction is up. There is no weight, in the heaviest place there is. And it is utterly silent. No light has ever reached it. No eye will ever see it. And yet it is the engine that everything above depends on. And here is one last thought to carry back up with you. The iron in this core, the iron that builds our shield and keeps us alive, is the same iron that runs red in your blood, forged inside dying stars long before the Earth existed. In a strange and literal way, the center of the planet and the center of you are made of the very same thing. We are all of us distant relatives of the fire at the heart of the world. Now let's rise. Let's go back up, but this time, let's see the whole thing at once. Because now you know what is underneath you. A solid iron heart, as hot as the sun, frozen by pressure, slowly growing, quietly changing direction. Wrapped in an ocean of liquid metal that generates the shield keeping the sky in place. Wrapped in almost 3,000 kilometers of solid rock that flows like honey over the ages, carrying continents on its back, storing an ocean's worth of water inside its crystals. And wrapped, finally, in a crust so thin it is barely there at all, a fragile skin, thinner than the skin of an apple, where every living thing that has ever existed makes its home. We stand on that skin our whole lives, and we almost never think about what is beneath it. We build our cities and fight our wars and live our small, bright lives on a thin cooling crust, floating on a planet-sized engine of fire and metal that we have never seen and can never visit. The next time you feel the ground beneath your feet, solid, still, permanent, remember what it really is. Not a foundation. A surface. The thinnest possible film over 6,000 kilometers of moving heat. Remember that the reason you can breathe, the reason the sky hasn't burned away, is a machine of liquid iron turning in the dark 3,000 kilometers down, running on the slow freezing of a metal heart. And remember that for all our satellites and instruments and centuries of science, we have physically reached only 12 kilometers down. 0.2%. Everything else, the mantle, the core, the frozen heart, the ocean of iron, the hidden water, the buried remains of a lost planet, all of it, we know only from echoes. We have walked on the moon. We have sent machines beyond the edge of the solar system. And yet the largest unexplored place in our entire world is not somewhere out there in the dark between the stars. It is directly beneath your feet. It always has been. The most alien, most extreme, most impossible place we have ever discovered is the inside of our own planet, and we have barely begun to listen to it. So the next time someone tells you the age of exploration is over, that everything has been mapped, that there is nowhere left to go, you can smile and look down. Because the greatest journey of all doesn't go outward. It goes straight down. And we have only taken the first step. If this changed the way you feel about the ground beneath your feet, stay with us. Because next time, we go somewhere the light has never reached, and this time, we are not coming back the same way we went in.